You don't inherit history. You choose what to preserve and what to bury. The air was thick with heat and movement as Kesi Daniels stepped out of the terminal and into the neon-lit pulse of Hong Kong. It wasn't quite what she expected. It was more alive, more intense, more unapologetically itself. Skyscrapers stabbed the sky like polished obsidian blades, and below them, the harbor shimmered. City lights dancing across the water like fireflies trapped under glass. There was no breeze, no welcome party, just the rumble of traffic, the distant buzz of a tram, and a new world waiting to be understood. Kesi gripped the worn leather strap of her carry-on and exhaled. You made it, girl. A fellowship. 6 months of research, lectures, and cultural exchange. A chance to finally step into the rooms she was always told she didn't belong in. A Caribbean Black woman in the archives of empire. A poet among politicians. A storm in silk. The Ho Foundation Gala was held in the crystalline hall of the Jade Pavilion Museum. The invitation was unexpected. An early welcome to international fellows. Kesi didn't have the dress code, but she had presence. A second-hand green dress with a low back. Tight coils framed her face. She didn't hide her accent, her roots, or her bold lipstick. She didn't need to. Inside, everything gleamed. Gold railings, crystal chandeliers, and people in designer suits who floated more than walked. Kesi felt eyes on her. Not just curiosity, assessment. And then he walked in. Liam Ho, 32. Elegantly cut black suit. No tie. His presence filled the space like pressure in a room where the windows had just shut. The room hushed when he approached the podium. Not out of fear, something stranger. Expectation. Good evening, Liam began, his voice cool and clear. Tonight, we celebrate legacy, preservation, the foundation that allows us to rise. His speech was flawless, every word carved with care, and yet, to Kesi, it felt hollow, curated, a museum piece pretending to be alive. When the floor opened for questions, most were polite. Kesi's wasn't. She stood, heart steady. Mr. Ho, you said legacy is a foundation, but whose? And at what cost? The room shifted. A few heads turned sharply. Excuse me? Liam asked smoothly, though his eyes narrowed slightly. Kesi didn't flinch. Many of the artifacts in this museum come from colonial collections. Some of them, according to the very catalog on display, were taken, not donated. So when you say legacy, are you referring to restoration or revision? The room stilled. Liam's lips curved into something almost like a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. History, he said slowly, is written by those who preserve it. If we abandoned every relic with a complicated origin, we'd be left with empty shelves. Maybe, Kesi replied, lifting her chin. Or maybe we'd finally be forced to fill those shelves with truth. For a beat, there was only silence, and then a few scattered claps, from the students mostly. Liam's gaze lingered on her, calculating, curious, and then, almost softly, Miss Daniels, she said. Ms. Daniels, Liam repeated. I'll remember that. He found her information within the hour. Kesi Daniela Daniels, Guyanese, Fulbright scholar, cultural historian, minor published poet. Degree from the University of the West Indies. Fellowship at the Hong Kong Heritage Conservatory. Former student activist. She wasn't rich, she wasn't connected, and she had nothing to gain by challenging him in front of the city's elite, which made her the most dangerous person in the room. Liam stared at the screen in front of him, her photo glowing faintly, her face serious, her hair wild and defiant. He was used to silence, obedience, admiration that bent instead of questioned. But this woman, she had fire. And something in him, something long dormant, stirred. That night, sitting by the small window of her guest house, Kesi wrote in her journal, "Tonight, I questioned a man who builds museums out of memory. He smiled like it didn't shake him. But something cracked. I saw it. I felt it. This city is louder than I thought, but so is my voice. And I won't let them rewrite us. Not here. Not ever." Down in Central, Liam stared out at the skyline from his penthouse balcony. He thought of her words. Maybe we'd finally fill those shelves with truth. And he smiled, not in victory, but in warning. She has no idea what she's walked into. The email arrived before breakfast. Subject line, a friendly challenge. From Liam Ho. Ms. Daniels, since you appear to have opinions on our historical holdings, perhaps you'd like the chance to see them properly. Consider this a personal invitation for a guided tour of Ho Global's private archives. Let's see how deep your knowledge really goes. Liam Ho. Kesi read the message 3 times, then once more just to feel the prickle of irritation at his tone. Let's see how deep your knowledge goes. The man sounded like he was hosting a quiz show, not a conversation on history. Still, her heart fluttered, not because of the arrogance, but because underneath it was curiosity, not condescension. He wanted to understand her, or test her, or both. They met at Ho Global's private museum wing, sealed behind a biometric lock and brushed steel doors. The air was cool, dry, and dense with the scent of lacquered wood and old paper. Liam waited at the threshold, in a black suit without a tie again, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Casual, but calculated. "Ms. Daniels," he greeted, his eyes skating over her cream blouse and fitted black slacks. "Punctual. I like that." "Mr. Ho," she replied evenly. "You're the one who asked me to prove myself." "No," he said, as the doors unlocked behind them. "I asked you to challenge me. You already proved yourself last night." Kesi blinked, but said nothing. The room beyond was unlike any museum she'd ever seen. Polished display tables showcased maps dating back to the Opium Wars. Inlaid cabinets held looted scrolls, hand-carved ivory trinkets, and medals from British officers gifted to Chinese collaborators. A painting hung on the far wall, a watercolor of a Caribbean sugar port. Her history, rendered in someone else's brushstroke. "This is your legacy?" she asked, pausing beside a glass-encased compass etched with colonial insignia. "This," Liam replied, stepping beside her, "is my inheritance, not necessarily my choice. And yet you preserve it." He turned to her. "Because if I don't, someone else will twist it. Or someone like me might rewrite it." A pause. Then Liam laughed. Low, unexpected, disarming. "You're dangerous. Only to people who think empire is eternal." Their eyes locked. The air shifted. Something unspoken passed between them. Liam walked her to a long drawer set into the wall. "There's one artifact I haven't shown to anyone in 5 years, he said, typing in a passcode. "But something tells me you'll understand it." He pulled out a small leather-bound book, pages browned at the edges, the handwriting sharp and slanted. "This was my mother's," he said softly. "A journal she kept when she was a junior curator here, before she married my father, before everything changed." Kesi carefully opened the pages. Inside, entries dated 30 years ago. "They won't listen to me. I told them the Burmese manuscript was stolen, and I was told to keep smiling and let the men decide what history looks like." Page after page, quiet rebellion, private pain, buried beneath a gilded life. "She tried," Liam said, voice tight. and they buried her under glass and silence. Kesi's voice dropped. You think if you hold this empire together, it will prove she didn't fail? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Later, as the elevator descended back to the main floor, their reflections stood side by side in mirrored walls, close, but not touching. Why me? Kesi asked, breaking the quiet. Because you don't flinch when people look through you, Liam said, and because you say what I can't afford to. She looked at him, unsure whether to feel seen or used. When the doors opened, he didn't step out immediately. Walk with me sometime, he said. No museums, just the city. It's quieter when no one's watching. I'll think about it. Kesi returned to the conservatory late, only to be summoned to her supervisor's office before she could even change. Dr. Elaine Kwan, stoic and respected, closed the door behind her. You had a private meeting with Liam Ho? It was a tour, Kesi replied. Professional. It was public enough to reach the university board in under 12 hours. Kesi frowned. I didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to. You're a black woman in Hong Kong challenging one of its richest sons. That is the story. Kesi sank into the chair across from her. What do you want me to do? Avoid him? Ignore what I saw? What I felt when I read his mother's words? Dr. Kwan exhaled. I'm saying, be smart. Men like Liam Ho don't get tangled. They trap people. Maybe I'm not afraid of being caught. Kwan narrowed her eyes. Then be afraid of being framed. Later that night, Liam stared out from his penthouse balcony again, city lights blazing below. He reread his mother's journal for the 100th time and stopped at one line he hadn't noticed before. One day, someone will name the empire for what it truly is. Not a monument, but a mausoleum. His phone buzzed. A message from Kesi. The compass you showed me, it wasn't pointing north. Someone twisted the needle. Just thought you should know. He smiled. So she's still thinking about me, he murmured aloud. But his eyes weren't smiling. They were afraid, because he was thinking about her too. Too much. Some years ago. The winter rain slammed against the high windows of the Ho estate. Inside the family study, Liam's mother, John Yu, stood with trembling hands. She had just returned from an international symposium in Geneva, where she presented evidence that Ho Global Holdings possessed illegally acquired antiquities. She expected support. Instead, she was met with a boardroom full of stone faces. And one, in particular, Chairman Ho, tightened his jaw. You forget your place, he hissed. This isn't academia. This is empire, and you don't get to question how we built it. John Yu's voice cracked, but not from fear. I love this company like it was a child, but I won't raise it into a monster. Chairman Ho smiled. Cold. Final. Then we'll bury your legacy before you bury ours. That night, Jian Yu resigned from public life. The next year, she was found collapsed in her study. Stroke, they said. But Liam never believed it. The timing, the silence, the look in his father's eyes. Something in him broke that night. Something he never dared name. Liam stared out at the skyline. His mother's journal sat open on his desk beside a folder labeled QRO Corporation, Engagement Contract. His father's voice cut through the silence. It's time, Chairman Ho said. The board is watching. The Chow deal finalizes next quarter. Announce the engagement by the end of the month. You mean the merger, Liam muttered. Call it what you like, his father snapped. She's a political gold mine. Her father controls half the ports in Fujian province. With the Chow name, we secure legacy. Liam didn't turn. You didn't build this for legacy, he said flatly. You built it to hide what you destroyed. Chairman Ho crossed the room slowly. I built it to survive. something your mother never understood. You're either part of the structure or crushed beneath it. Maybe I don't want either. You'll want it when everything you've ever known is on the line. A long silence. Finalize it, Liam, or I will. Meanwhile, Kesi knelt in the narrow back alley of a cramped tenement building in Kowloon. A 14-year-old boy named Jun Kai sat cross-legged beside her, holding an old photo in his lap. His grandfather in a military uniform, smiling beneath a sun-bleached sky. He was one of the few Chinese officers who refused to collaborate with the British, Jun said, eyes shining. But no one ever talks about him. No street named after him. Nothing. Tell the story anyway, Kesi urged gently. Let them know his name. That's how history starts again, from the margins. Kesi took out her recorder, nodding for him to begin. As Jun spoke, tears filled his eyes. Kesi swallowed hard, steadying her breath. This, she thought, is why I came. Later that night, she returned to the conservatory and stayed late editing Jun's voiceover into a short digital clip. She uploaded it to the local archive student submission page with trembling fingers. Liam stood in his office, arms crossed, watching the video Kesi posted. Jun's story. Kesi's soft voice at the end. Our ancestors were more than shadows in someone else's empire. They were the sun. Let them burn. He closed the laptop, made a call. This is Liam Ho. I want to set up an anonymous education fund, full tuition, relocation assistance, and make sure it covers Junkai's family rent for the next 2 years. Any reason, sir? The assistant asked. He's the future, Liam said quietly. Let's not fail him the way we failed his grandfather. Later, in the university garden, Kesi was seated on a low wall, flipping through student submissions when Liam approached silently. You're hard to find when you're not arguing with billionaires, he said. She looked up, startled, then smirking. You didn't seem to mind. I didn't, he admitted. Still don't. A pause. You saw Jun's video? She asked. I did, Liam said. And I might have had something to do with the tuition offer he just received. Kesi blinked, standing slowly. You paid for him? Anonymous, he said, hands in pockets. But yes, he deserves to learn without fear. That's good of you, she said cautiously. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised, she replied. I'm wondering how many sides of you exist, and which one I'm talking to right now. Liam looked at her, unblinking. Maybe I don't know either, but I know when I look at you, I want to be the better one. Silence hung between them, then, walk with me? He asked. No museums? She teased. Just air. They walked side by side through the quiet campus, the city murmuring in the distance. For the first time in a long time, Liam Ho didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man walking next to a woman who saw straight through his steel-plated exterior and hadn't run. Not yet. That night, Kesi received a call from Professor Wallace back in Guyana. Kesi, she said gently, be careful with that boy. You mean Liam? No, I mean the empire that raised him. I'm not involved with him. A pause. Not yet, the professor said, but you will be. And when that time comes, ask yourself, if you loved a man made of glass and stone, could you bear the moment he cracks? Kesi didn't answer. Outside her window, Hong Kong pulsed with 100,000 lights, none brighter than the storm just beginning to gather. The sky was gray with mist as they walked through the overgrown courtyard of the former colonial prison. What remained of the structure stood like bones, jagged walls covered in creeping vines, iron bars rusted but still unyielding. The site had recently been converted into a minor heritage museum, but the ghost remained in the air, untouched and heavy. Kesi moved slowly, fingers grazing the crumbling stone. My grandmother used to mention this place, she murmured, but never by name. Just the cell with no sky. I didn't realize until last week that she meant this. Liam kept pace beside her, his hands in his pockets, gaze steady. She was detained here? During the protests in 1954, she was barely 19. She organized a reading circle that passed out banned leaflets about British trade deals. They arrested her and 5 others, said she was agitating the labor force. Kesi let out a small, bitter laugh. She never called herself an activist, just a girl who asked questions. They reached the inner courtyard, where the plaques had worn away and only the stone spoke. Kesi stopped, her chest rising and falling in quiet waves. She said it was here, she whispered. This is where they beat her, made her recite the Queen's oath until her mouth bled. She crouched slowly, hand brushing the ground. Liam didn't speak. And then she began to cry, not loudly, not dramatically, but like something finally broke loose inside her. Generations of silence, swallowed down through clenched teeth, rose to the surface like smoke. I was so proud of getting this fellowship, she whispered, coming here, standing in these institutions. I thought I was walking into the future, but I'm standing on my grandmother's bruises. Liam knelt beside her. You are, he said quietly, but you're also rewriting it. Every time you walk into a room they never built for you, you change the story. Do I? She asked, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. Or am I just a quieter prisoner? He looked at her, eyes heavy with something he'd never let anyone else see. Guilt, longing, and something else. Something ancient. Something aching to understand. Kesi, he said gently, I don't know what it's like to carry your history, but I know what it feels like to be trapped in one. A beat of silence. My mother tried to dismantle the empire from inside, he added. She failed. Maybe because she was alone. Maybe because she believed someone like me wouldn't survive outside it. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. But if I'm going to dismantle anything, I don't want to do it alone. Kesi looked at their hands, hers still trembling, his warm and steady. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because people like you always go back to your world, and people like me get punished for believing we were part of it, even for a second. Liam's voice softened. Then let me prove I'm not going back. That night, Liam returned to the Ho family penthouse, a cold, angular place of stone floors and tall glass windows that looked like they were designed for watching the city, but not being part of it. He poured himself a drink, and then, so this is what you do after disappearing for days. The voice drifted in like silk laced with steel. Mei Ling Chow, tall, poised, and dressed in bone-white linen that looked sharp enough to draw blood. She was seated on one of the leather sofas, legs crossed, one manicured finger tracing the rim of a wine glass she hadn't touched. You let your father make announcements to the board. You vanish from social events. And then I find you wandering the ghost of colonial Hong Kong with a girl no one in our circle has ever heard of. Liam didn't react. How did you get in? He asked coolly. Still have my key, she said. I had it recut last year. Thought it'd be symbolic. Of what? Survival? A beat. She's not like them, Liam said simply. She doesn't care who I am. Mei Ling tilted her head. No, she cares who she is. And that, Liam, is a far more dangerous thing. He sat across from her, jaw tightening. I never asked for this arrangement. And I never asked to be a pawn in your father's political game. But here we are, both raised by empires, both trained not to bleed. A pause. You care about her, she said flatly. Yes. Mei Ling's gaze darkened, not with jealousy, but with something sharper, Then don't pretend we don't have a war coming. You came to threaten me? No, darling, she said, standing slowly. I came to warn you. She walked to the door but paused with her hand on the handle. Choose carefully, because the board doesn't just want a CEO, they want a dynasty, and dynasties do not tolerate scandal. What about truth? Mealing looked over her shoulder. Truth doesn't pay dividends. She left without another word. Later, in her guest house room, Kesi sat by the window and scribbled something in her journal. I held hands with a man whose world was built by people who would have chained mine, and yet, in his touch, I felt no chains. Just grief. Just war drums. Just a maybe. Far above the city, Liam stood on his balcony. The wind had picked up. Storm season was coming. And in the glass of his high-rise windows, he caught his reflection. But he no longer looked like his father's son. He looked like a man about to lose everything, or finally choose what mattered most. The ballroom was gold-lit and glittering. Velvet tablecloths, violins in the corner, and white-gloved waiters circling like whispers. It was a charity gala hosted by the Kowloon Cultural Heritage Foundation, and Kesi Daniels was the featured international voice. She stood on stage alone, a single spotlight illuminating her silhouette. She wore a sapphire blue silk jumpsuit, hair pinned in soft coils, and in her hand, a folded page of poetry, creased at the edges. Liam stood in the back, watching, not as CEO, not as heir, as a man whose heart was slowly waking up. Kesi opened the paper and began. Some nations colonized with chains, others with maps and ink. But the cruelest conquest was the one that told me my grandmother's silence was the price of her freedom. A hush fell over the room. They ask us why we still write about it, as if wounds don't echo, as if my mother's bent back wasn't a history book that no one ever opened. But I write because memory is the most sacred rebellion of all, and I come from rebels who bled with their mouths shut so I could speak. When she finished, the silence was thick, uncomfortable, stirred, then applause, slow at first, then thunderous. But not everyone was clapping. From a corner table, an executive from the mainland delegation whispered to his neighbor. Someone from the Ministry of Cultural Affairs folded their arms tightly. The words anti-national undertones began to drift like smoke before anyone could name the fire. Within hours, clips of the poem were uploaded and trending across Hong Kong social media. Hashtag Kesi Daniels. Hashtag silence is not peace. Hashtag history in her mouth. Some praised her. Finally, someone says it out loud. The diaspora reclaiming power in real time. Others attacked. Foreign radical stirs unrest. Disrespectful to the nation hosting her. She should go back to where she came from. The next morning, Ho Global's boardroom was ablaze in quiet fury. Chairman Ho slammed a file down on the table. She is your mistake, Liam. Liam sat calm, unreadable. She's a poet, not a criminal. She's an activist with a microphone, his father snapped. And now the entire mainland delegation is watching this company for signs of disloyalty. Disloyalty? Liam's voice sharpened. Because a woman spoke the truth of her people's history? Because you let her do it on your stage, his father thundered. You were seen standing in the crowd, smiling. Liam met his father's eyes, cold, clear. I smiled because she had more courage than anyone in this room. Gasps. A sharp intake of breath from a junior executive. Silence fell. Chairman Ho stepped closer. End it. Publicly. Or I will. And when I do, it won't be quiet. Liam didn't flinch. Then make it loud, but you won't touch her. And he walked out. That night, Kesi stood alone on the upper deck of the Star Ferry, arms folded against the sea breeze. The city lights glittered behind her, distorted by the dark water and her own shaky thoughts. Footsteps. She turned. Liam, breathless. Tie loosened. Expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "You should be somewhere cleaning up the mess I made." "It's not a mess," he said, stepping closer. "It's a truth the world finally heard, and I'm proud it came from you." She looked at him, tired, raw. "You know what people are saying?" "Yes." "You know what it means for your company?" "Yes." A beat. "Then why are you here?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he closed the space between them and pressed his forehead gently to hers. "Because every time you speak, I remember what it feels like to breathe." And then he kissed her, soft where deep, not hungry, but aching. A kiss that didn't ask for anything but recognition. A kiss that said, "I see you." Kesi melted into him for just a moment, before he pulled away, suddenly. Liam's breath caught. "I shouldn't have." She blinked. "Why did you?" "Because I wanted to." A pause. "But wanting you isn't enough." And then, before she could ask why, he turned and walked away, leaving the sound of waves, wind, and everything unsaid between them. In his penthouse, Liam stood alone, drenched from the ferry mist, watching news feeds about Kesi scroll across his tablet. Ho Global under scrutiny after viral poem sparks nationalist backlash. Chow family alliance at risk? Foreign scholar or foreign agitator? Meanwhile, in her small room, Kesi stared at her laptop. An email from the Heritage Conservatory had arrived. "We will be reviewing your participation in future public events. Please refrain from engaging in politically sensitive topics moving forward." Kesi's hand hovered over the reply button. Then she closed the laptop and whispered to herself, "I wasn't trying to be political. I was just trying to be honest." Hate? The rain tapped steadily against the window panes of the Heritage Conservatory Cafe. Kesi stirred her tea absently, earbuds in, screen open. Her phone buzzed with the news alerts, but she ignored them, until she noticed her supervisor freeze mid-sip of her coffee, eyes fixed on her own phone. Dr. Kwan looked up, then slowly turned the screen toward Kesi. It was the front page of the Hong Kong Business Journal. Power meets power. Ho Global's Liam Ho, officially engaged to Chow Mei-ling in historic corporate alliance. The headline burned. The photo below showed Liam and Mei-ling at a corporate event, Mei-ling's hand lightly resting on Liam's arm. He wore a suit and that careful, blank expression he mastered so well. But it was the quote beneath it that gutted her. It was always meant to be this way. Chairman Ho. Kesi couldn't breathe, not even blink. Her hands went numb. Her heart slammed against her ribs with a sickening thud. He hadn't told her. After everything, he didn't tell her. Dr. Kwan spoke gently. "I warned you, Kesi. These people have always played chess. We're just pawns they forget to remove from the board." Kesi stood. "I need air." "What you need is a thicker skin." "No," she said, eyes burning. "What I need is answers." She found Liam in the west wing of Ho Global's main building. He had just finished a press briefing, surrounded by executives and cameras, but when he saw her, everything stopped. "Kesi, don't." Her voice was sharp, controlled, but beneath the surface, rage crackled like lightning barely held back. "You had time to plan a merger, organize a press release, pose for photos, shake hands, but not once. Not once, Liam. Did you think to tell me?" He stepped forward, his jaw tight. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. What part? She hissed. The part where I find out I was just a brief intermission between dynasties? No, he said, voice low. That's not what this was. Then what was it? Liam's eyes were pained. The lie he never told hung between them like a fog. It was real. Every moment, every word, every time I looked at you and forgot my name. She blinked hard. Then why the hell am I reading your engagement in the paper? He hesitated, stammered, but didn't deny it. Because you were the part of my life I didn't plan for, he whispered, and the only part that felt real. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. Not here, not in front of the building he built on silence and shame. You don't get to call it real, she said, her voice breaking, when you chose everything else instead of me. I didn't choose her, he said. No, she snapped. You chose you. You chose the boy who was too afraid to burn the empire down. She turned, walked away. He didn't stop her. Later, at the Chow family estate, Mei Ling stood by a koi pond in a white silk blouse, watching Liam approach through the misted garden. He looked like a man drained of everything. Resolve, certainty, oxygen. She found out, didn't she? He nodded. She left? Another nod. Mei Ling tilted her head, serene. You loved her. Still do. Good, she said softly. Now you know how dangerous love is in a world like ours. Did you know about the article? Of course. Your father made the arrangements. I provided the quote he wanted. A pause. You helped him lie? No, Mei Ling said, with icy clarity. I helped him control the story. The lie was yours. Liam closed his eyes. You're cruel. I'm surviving, she said simply. And one day, when the walls fall in on you, Liam, don't say I didn't warn you. She walked past him, her perfume trailing behind like cold flowers. In her apartment, Kesi sat by the window with a cup of untouched tea and the poem she'd written for Liam in her lap, one she'd never read aloud. She ripped it in half. Then, in her journal, she wrote, "The empire never breaks your heart all at once. It starts with silence, then headlines, then the sound of a man calling you real, after showing the world you weren't even worth mentioning." And beneath it, she added, "I hope he chokes on what he didn't say." Kesi sat alone in the consulate lobby, her flight confirmation email open on her screen. 7:55 a.m. Hong Kong to Georgetown one way. Her suitcase stood by her knee like a sealed goodbye. She hadn't told anyone, not the fellowship director, not her colleagues, and especially not Liam. The airport staff returned with a frown. "There's a hold on your travel clearance," the woman said in clipped Cantonese accented English. "Your visa can't be cleared until a review by the conservatory board, possibly a few days." Kesi blinked. "Excuse me? Did you know someone placed an internal request to delay your departure?" Her mouth dried. Her fingers curled slowly into fists. Kesi stormed into the Ho Foundation's West Wing, the echo of her heels louder than her fury. Liam stood beside a glass model of a new cultural center proposal, mid-conversation with an architect. But when he saw her, his voice faltered. "Kesi, you blocked my exit?" The architect blinked and stepped away. Liam sighed quietly. "Technically, I delayed it. There's a difference. You pulled political strings so I couldn't leave. So I could talk to you." She stepped closer. Her voice was lower now, fierce, devastated. "You don't get to control me after choosing someone else. You don't get to trap me here because your conscience woke up too late." "No," he said quietly. "I did it because I'm afraid I'll never see you again." She froze. He took a step forward. "Please, just stay until your fellowship ends. 3 more weeks. After that, I'll never ask anything again." Her eyes searched his face for sincerity or weakness. All she saw was ache. "Why?" "Because if I could choose," he whispered, "it wouldn't be power or legacy or mealing. A breath. It would be you." That night, the city thundered under a sudden spring downpour. Kesi opened the door of her modest apartment to find Liam standing in the rain, drenched and breathless, holding 2 paper containers of a curry and noodles. "You look like you skipped dinner," he said. She let him in. They didn't speak for the first 20 minutes. They just sat, cross-legged on the floor, backs against the wall, sharing food like strangers learning to be human again. After a while, Kesi asked softly, "Why do you always look like you're trying to apologize without saying sorry?" "Because I am." She looked down at the carpet. "You hurt me." "I know." "And you still kissed me on that ferry." "Because I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance again." They were quiet. Rain hissed against the window like memory itself. "You want to fix this," she said, "but some things stay cracked." "Then let me sit with the pieces." Later, she pulled out a blanket. He didn't ask to stay, but she laid it down on the couch, and when their hands brushed, it lingered. "You can stay," she said softly, "but nothing happens. I wasn't expecting anything. I just needed to say it out loud." He nodded. "Thank you for trusting me with even this much." She turned off the lamp. In the dark, their silhouettes glowed faintly from the streetlight outside, and for the first time, they slept under the same roof. Not as lovers, but as 2 souls too tired to lie anymore. Early the next morning, a knock rattled the apartment door. Kesi opened it, still in her oversized t-shirt and shorts, only to freeze. Kneeling, in a trench coat, her hair slick from rain, heels glistening, cold elegance wrapped in steel. "I figured he'd be here," she said. Kesi stepped aside instinctively as Mealing walked in. Liam came out of the bathroom in a hoodie, damp hair and towel slung over his neck, then stopped dead. "Mealing." "Don't," she cut in, voice smooth. "I'm not here to embarrass you." "How did you know?" "Because I know you, Liam, and I know the difference between power and weakness." Her eyes shifted to Kesi. "Don't be naive," she said. "You were never the endgame." Kesi's jaw tensed. "Maybe I never wanted to be part of your game at all." "But you were," Mealing replied with surgical calm. "You walked into a world built on arrangement, control, and perception, and you thought love would be enough." She turned to Liam. "I'm not here to stop you. I'm just here to remind you. There's always a cost." She left, door shut like a verdict. Liam sat back down on the couch. His hands trembled. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Kesi stared at the door. "She didn't break me," she said softly. "But you did." He looked at her, begging. "Tell me what I can do." She hesitated. "Stop running from the truth. Not just the empire. Not just your father. You, the scared, silent boy who watches everything burn so he won't be blamed for holding the match." Silence. Then Kesi walked into her room. She didn't slam the door, but she closed it, firmly, and Liam was left with only his reflection in the darkened glass, a man suspended between guilt and the girl who still dared to love him, even now. The sky above Victoria Harbor was overcast, thick with humidity and storm tension. Inside a private club reserved for Hong Kong's elite, Chairman Ho sat across from an immigration officer. Polite tea was poured, paperwork exchanged. A single photo of Kesi Daniels lay on the table between them. "She's no longer just a poet," Chairman Ho said, voice cool. "She's a complication, one we cannot afford." "What exactly do you want us to do, sir?" the officer asked cautiously. "Delay her extension, review her files, create noise, just enough to spook her into leaving. The sooner she's out of Hong Kong, the cleaner this engagement will proceed. A pause. And your son? Chairman Ho smiled without warmth. He'll thank me later. Love is temporary. Legacy isn't. Liam was in a boardroom meeting when his phone vibrated with a message from an old university contact working in the immigration office. She's flagged for reevaluation. From the top. I thought you should know. Liam's breath caught. He stood. Excuse me, he said. Something more important just came up. He left the room mid-sentence. Kesi was at the Yau Ma Tei market, sketching layout ideas for her student poetry showcase when Liam found her. His face was grim, jaw clenched like it was holding back a storm. We need to talk. I'm busy, she replied, not looking up. Your visa's being reviewed, fast-tracked, from someone high. She froze. What? My father's behind it. He's trying to push you out before you make more waves. Because I spoke truth? Because I exist in rooms they'd rather keep clean? Because he sees you as leverage against me, Liam said, and he thinks if you're gone, I'll fall back in line. Kesi's voice sharpened. Will you? He didn't answer. I found you an apartment. Quiet. Under a different name. Just until things cool off. I can... She stood abruptly. No! Kesi! I won't be hidden like a mistress, she said, voice trembling. I'm not a scandal in heels you smuggle into the city's shadow. It's not like that, isn't it? Because it sounds exactly like that. Hide me so you don't have to choose. Protect me privately so you can pretend publicly. His hands curled into fists. I'm trying to keep you safe. Then fight. Not from behind walls, but in the light, or let me go. Their eyes locked. It was the first time she saw real fear in him. Not fear of losing power, but of losing her. That night, Kesi sat at her desk in silence. She opened her laptop and created a blank document. Title, Empire of You and Me. Then, slowly, she typed, They taught me that empires are built from stone and war. But I've seen softer ones. Ones made of restraint. Of silence dressed as protection. Of men who swear they love you while hiding you like a stain. She paused, breathed, typed again. This is not a love story. This is a reclamation. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. The girl who once begged to be seen, she was done begging. Liam stood on the rooftop of Ho Tower that night, wind tugging at his sleeves, city glowing beneath him. He had the apartment key in his pocket. He never delivered it. Instead, he opened his phone and found her latest post, an excerpt from the new manuscript. He read it 3 times. One line lingered. Some men give you the world. Others make you fight to exist in it. He closed his eyes. And for the first time, he cried. Not in the shattered way people sob, but in the quiet way powerful men do, when they realize they are not brave enough yet to deserve the thing they love. There was a man who taught me how many names power wears, how it kisses your hand in private and denies you in public, how it says, I love you like a secret, and how I once loved him anyway. She closes her laptop. Her eyes are clear now, and the war has only just begun. The message came at midnight from Professor June Wallace. Subject line, It's time. She asked Kesi to meet her at a quiet, book-filled cafe in Shengwan. When Kesi arrived the next morning, Professor Wallace was already there, hands wrapped around a cup of black tea, eyes distant, as if she'd been waiting years for this moment. How much do you know about John Yu Ho? Wallace asked softly. Kesi blinked. Liam's mother? Only what the public records say, that she was a brilliant curator, died of a stroke in her early 40s. Quiet legacy, no scandals. Wallace's mouth tightened. A beautifully polished lie. I knew her. We studied together at Oxford. I was there the night she tried to blow the whistle on Ho Global Holdings. Kesi stilled. Why didn't anyone report it? She did report it, Wallace said, to a private ethics board. She uncovered a chain of art laundering, falsified provenance papers, bribes to customs officials. She submitted everything. And 2 weeks later, she was silenced, branded unstable, forced to resign. A year later, she was dead. They said it was a stroke. And maybe it was, Wallace said, eyes narrowing. Or maybe it was exhaustion from watching an empire erase everything she tried to protect. Kesi's voice dropped. Does Liam know? He suspects, but he's never been brave enough to ask the right questions. Until now. Liam stood alone in the Ho Foundation's archive wing, heart pounding. He entered his mother's old office, dust-coated bookshelves, locked drawers, a cracked photo frame of John Yu holding baby Liam, smiling at something just beyond the lens. She looked free in that photo. He didn't remember her that way. He searched for hours. Nothing. Until, behind a false panel at the back of her bookshelf, he found a USB drive, brittle and yellowing from age. When he plugged it in, a single folder appeared, /root/. Inside, a confidential report, time-stamped 14 years ago, watermarked with the Ho Global Holdings seal. The title made his blood run cold. Asset Movement and Acquisition. Anomalies. Case Study 2009 to 2010. Confidential. Internal Ethics Board. He clicked, line after line of falsified transactions. Priceless art redirected through shell NGOs. Acquisitions tied to bribery and political coercion. And at the bottom, the names of key participants. First, Raymond Zhao, former COO. Second, Vice Chair S. Ho, his stepfather. Third, C. Ho, his own father. Jesus Christ, Liam whispered. That evening, Liam stormed into his father's private suite at Ho Tower, laptop in hand. Chairman Ho looked up, unsurprised. You finally opened her file. You let them destroy her. I kept the company afloat, and I saved your name. You erased her, Dad. Chairman Ho stood, tone icy. She threatened everything we built. She thought the truth was more important than survival. It was. No, son, the truth was her death warrant, and you have me to thank that you're not buried next to her. Liam shook with fury. I built my life thinking you were the survivor. Turns out, you're the executioner. Chairman Ho stepped close, and yet you're still here, in my tower, wearing my name. A long pause. Not for long. Later that night, Kesi opened her door and found Liam standing there, eyes bloodshot, clothes rumpled, something unreadable in his gaze. I know what they did to her, he said softly. My mother. I found the report. My father. My stepfather. They buried her under the same lies they're trying to bury you under. Kesi's breath hitched. What are you going to do? Liam stepped inside. I don't know, but I know I can't stay clean anymore. Not if I want to burn it all down. He sat, spine folding in defeat. I thought loving you would be my undoing. And now? He looked up, voice raw. Now I know not loving you would have made me just like them. Later, after Liam left, Kesi sat at her desk and opened her manuscript again. Chapter 3. The Root. The worst betrayals are not the loud ones. They are the ones done in silence, behind gold-plated doors, by men in tailored suits who call you darling with one hand and sign your erasure with the other. She closed her eyes. She wasn't afraid anymore. Because the Empire had taught her what power looked like, and now she was becoming it. The day started like any other. Kesi was on her way to teach a youth poetry seminar at a community center in Simshatsui. She didn't notice the looks, not at first, not the shifting stares from people on the tram, not the subtle way two women stopped talking when she walked by. But the moment she opened her phone, she knew. The screen was flooded with notifications, DMS, tags, headlines, hashtag Ho Global Mistress, hashtag Foreign Seductress Scandal, the black woman behind the broken engagement, exotic disruption, how a Hong Kong heir got played. There were photos, private ones, her with Liam on the ferry, leaving her apartment, a blurry image of their kiss, and worse, her address leaked, her family name, her visa status, even a misquoted line from her poem used as weaponry. She came to write history, but she came for his empire. She froze in the street, then bolted. Inside a soundproof conference room, Liam stood with legal advisors, reviewing documents for an internal audit, when his assistant entered, white-faced. "Sir, it's everywhere. Kesi, the media. The story broke." Liam grabbed the tablet, scrolled. His own face stared back at him, alongside hers. His hand tightened around the device. "How bad is it?" "Targeted, racist, vicious, and it's escalating." "Shut it down. Get my PR team." "Already called, but they advise you don't issue a statement." He turned slowly. "What?" "They say a statement from you confirms the relationship, makes you complicit. Acknowledging her fuels the scandal. They're advising full silence. Let it burn out." Liam's jaw clenched. "And what happens to her?" "She's not our priority right now," said a lawyer quietly. "You are." Liam said nothing. He didn't move, didn't speak. And that was the mistake. Kesi sat on the edge of her bed, phone buzzing nonstop beside her. Her inbox was flooded with death threats, racial slurs, vile messages from anonymous accounts. Headlines blurred in her vision. Her supervisor had called earlier. "We're putting you on academic pause until this clears." Her student workshops were canceled. Her community sponsors had withdrawn. The gallery refused to display her upcoming showcase. She had become a virus, contagious by association. And from Liam, nothing. No call, no message, just silence. The same silence that had erased her grandmother. The same silence that once killed John Yu Ho. That night, Liam came. His face was pale, rain-drenched. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Kesi didn't say a word when he entered. She just stood in the center of her ruined sanctuary. Papers torn, bags half-packed, the manuscript on the floor, and stared at him. "You saw it," she said. He nodded. "You let it happen." "I tried." "No." Her voice cracked. "You stayed silent, just like they taught you to." "Kesi, I was protecting you." "By disappearing?" "They told me, my advisors. They said if I spoke, it would only make it worse." "For who?" she snapped. "For you or for me?" Liam's shoulders sagged. "I didn't know what to do." "You did. You just didn't choose me." She stepped back. "You let them feed on me. You let them turn my skin, my poems, my presence into ammunition. And you watched." He tried to reach for her. "Don't," she said. "Don't you dare. I love you." "Then why am I bleeding alone?" The room went still. She walked to the door and opened it. "Leave." "Kesi, please. Leave Liam. Before I start hating the man I used to believe in." He didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he did. And when the door clicked shut behind him, Kesi slid to the floor. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. She just pressed her palms to her chest and whispered, "It was real. And that's the part that hurts the most." Kesi picked up her manuscript. She stared at the cover. Empire of You and Me. Then she tore the first page out, then the next. Not all of it, just the pieces that still hurt too much to read. She sat down and rewrote the first line. "I was never the empire's end. I was its mirror, and when it saw me clearly, it broke itself trying to erase me." Outside her window, the city continued shining, oblivious. And Liam? He stood under the heavy rain on the hotel rooftop, shaking, broken. And for the first time in his life, he screamed, but no one heard it. The private fitting room inside the Chow Dynasty atelier was silent except for the sound of fabric whispering along polished floors. Mei-ling Chow stood still, arms slightly raised, as two seamstresses adjusted the intricate gold-threaded silk across her shoulders. The gown was exquisite, tailored from imported moonglow fabric, with phoenix embroidery stitched from a real silver. She looked like a myth, regal and poised, but when she turned to face the mirror, her expression didn't change. Not once. Not even when she whispered, "I look like someone else's bride." The seamstress smiled. "You look like a queen." "Queens bleed too," Mei-ling said absently. From the corner, her mother nodded in cold approval. "Dynasties demand grace, not feelings." Mei-ling lowered her eyes. "Of course." Later, she and Liam sat together in the back seat of a luxury sedan. Neither spoke. Their reflections glimmered faintly in the tinted windows, side by side yet oceans apart. The silence was so thick it almost felt like a third person in the car, a ghost sitting between them. Finally, Mei-ling broke it. "You haven't said a word about the dress." Liam turned his head slowly. "It's perfect." "So is a prison. Doesn't mean it was made for you." He looked at her then, properly, and for a moment, just a breath. He saw the girl she used to be before the politics, the arrangement, the rehearsed smiles. And she saw him too, ruined, exhausted, and pretending not to be in mourning. Back at the Chow estate, they sat in a sunken conversation room. No staff, no family, just them and two untouched glasses of rice wine. "Why haven't you canceled it yet?" Mei-ling asked, voice like silk over ice. Liam didn't respond. She turned to him, not accusatory, but quiet, devastating. "You love her." He inhaled, shallow, sharp. "Yes." Mei-ling smiled faintly. "That's why you're marrying me." "I don't want this." "But you'll do it, because your guilt is stronger than your courage." A pause. "Do you hate me for going along with it?" she asked. "No." "Then hate yourself. At least one of us should." She stood and walked to the door. "We've both been raised for this moment our entire lives. The problem is, only one of us is still playing the part." She didn't look back when she said, "I'll see you at the altar, Liam, dressed in silk, carrying your silence." Later that night, Liam sat in his mother's old office at the Ho Tower, the one he had finally restored, untouched since her death. He opened the USB drive again, reread every name, every falsified document, every blood-wrapped signature that built his empire out of broken hands and beautiful lies. And he made a decision. He called an old contact from the investigative division of a global news outlet. "This is Liam Ho." "Liam, it's been a while. You okay?" "No," he said, "but I want to be." "What are you asking for?" Liam looked at his mother's photo, her arms around him, eyes soft, long before the silence came. "I'm ready to tell the truth, everything, off the record until I say go." "You realize you're nuking your entire legacy?" "It was never mine. It was built from theft, and it killed my mother." And you're sure now? Liam's voice didn't waver. I'm not marrying into another lie. I'm ending one. As Liam compiled documents, files, email chains, account logs, Kesi's voice played over the montage from her manuscript empire of you and me. He was the son of an empire, raised to inherit silence. But somewhere along the way, he fell in love with noise, with poetry, with a woman who refused to bow. And so, for the first time in his life, he became a revolution. Liam sat alone in his penthouse, every light off but one. His hands hovered over the keyboard. On screen, a secure transfer platform. Attached were over 200 classified files, leaked internal audits, forged asset acquisition trails, bribery records. One file had a title in bold: Cow Consortium Payments, Port Bribery, and Foreign Influence. He stared at the cursor, then at the framed photograph of his mother. Her face smiled at him with a truth no empire could contain. He clicked, Upload Complete. Every major digital publication in Hong Kong lit up with red banners. Breaking. Liam Ho leaks corruption files. Implications involve Ho Global and Chow political dynasty. Whistleblower bombshell. Ho family empire tied to bribery, art laundering, and global influence fraud. Wedding canceled. Ho Chow union falls. Apart as scandal erupts. The news cycle exploded. Pundits screamed. Stocks tumbled. Government officials ducked cameras. And in a single hour, 2 dynasties began to collapse. Chairman Ho stood before a press wall flanked by trembling executives. Dozens of microphones, cameras, the city watching. Let me be clear, he said, voice clipped. My son has acted alone, recklessly, and in a way that no longer reflects this company's values. From this moment forward, he paused. Liam Ho is no longer affiliated with Ho Global Holdings in any capacity. He has been disowned from the Ho family estate and will forfeit all holdings. The room gasped. A reporter shouted, Do you deny the allegations? Chairman Ho didn't blink. We deny the method, not the message. He stepped away, and the empire, his legacy, began to rot in the light of day. Kesi stood at gate 17, suitcase by her side. Flight, Hong Kong to Georgetown. She hadn't slept. Her heart had settled somewhere between numb and broken. The manuscript was in her carry-on, half complete. Her phone buzzed nonstop with media requests, but she ignored them. She didn't know about the leaks. She didn't know Liam had burned his name for her. All she knew was that he hadn't stopped her. That when she cried and begged for truth, he said nothing. So now she was leaving. Not because she was weak, but because she finally knew love should not cost you your peace. A quiet announcement rang overhead. She didn't look back. She never saw the headlines on the terminal screens. She boarded without knowing she'd been loved to the point of destruction. That night, Liam stood in the ruins of what used to be his office. Empty walls, torn plaques. The building was under federal investigation now. He was alone. Not just without money, without her. He walked to the harbor, sat on the ferry dock bench where they once kissed. He checked his phone. Still no message. Still no goodbye. He opened her poetry site. The last posted line read, I stopped asking for space in someone else's palace. I built a home with my name carved into the foundation, alone, but finally real. He smiled through the ache. You were always the empire. Then he stood, rain falling around him. No umbrella, just the weight of a man who chose love and lost everything. Liam donated all of his assets anonymously to cultural programs. Some stories don't end with together. Some end with truth. And sometimes that's enough to start again. Liam Ho had once been everywhere. Television screens, magazines, skyscraper plaques, gala invitations. Now, he was nowhere. No statements, no sightings, no trace. His bank accounts had been liquidated and anonymously donated to arts education foundations across Asia. His penthouse had been sold. His father's empire had crumbled under investigation. Government contracts terminated. Assets frozen. The Ho name now whispered only in scandal. And Mei Ling Chow, gone. Quietly shipped to Europe on a private jet, escorted by family bodyguards in shame. No press, no wedding, just exile. And Liam, the boy with the silver spoon, the golden chains, and the broken heart, he disappeared into myth. The sun burned low over the coastline of Georgetown. Waves hummed in slow rhythm, and palm trees leaned in as if listening. Kesi Daniels stood inside the unfinished shell of a youth cultural center. The floor was still dirt in some corners. The roof leaked when it rained. But the walls? She painted them with student murals. Names of ancestors, faces of freedom fighters, lines from poems. It was coming alive, just like her. And yet, when she sat alone in the quiet, brushing paint off her fingers, she thought of him. Still, "I hate that I still want to tell you things," she whispered one night watching the ocean. "That I still look for your face in crowds that have never seen you." She buried herself in work, but the ache, the unresolved echo of Liam, lived in her chest like a bruise the world couldn't see. One humid morning, a package arrived. No return address, wrapped in brown craft paper, twine tied tight. Inside, a single item. A published poetry collection. Hardbound, matte black cover, gold lettering across the front, "Empire of You and Me," by Liam Ho. Her heart dropped. Hands trembling, she opened it. Every page, her words. Every stanza she had written. Every poem she thought lost when she left. But beneath the dedication, one note, typed, small, and taped just inside the front cover. "These were never mine, but I was always yours. This is the only way I could say it loud enough for the world to hear. LRH." Kesi sat down on the edge of the paint-stained floor, the book in her lap, unable to breathe. All this time, all this pain, and he had been loving her in silence, through ruin, through exile, through the ashes. Tears slid down her cheeks. Not the kind you cry for pain, but the kind that come when you realize you were never alone, even when it felt like the whole world left you. She flipped to the final poem. It was titled, "If I Could Choose." I would not choose legacy. I would not choose empire. I would not choose forgiveness that demands your silence. I would choose you. Every time, even if it meant losing everything else. Because I never truly saw the world until I saw it through your eyes. And God, what a beautiful place it became. That night, she placed the book on her nightstand like a relic, and when the power flickered out, as it sometimes did, she lit a candle and sat beneath the open window watching the stars. "If you're still out there," she whispered, "I want you to come home. Not for me, not for what we lost, but because I think maybe we're not finished yet." The breeze carried her words into the dark. Somewhere, far away, in a quiet village with no name and no mirrors, a man sat with dirt on his hands and a dog-eared copy of Empire of You and Me beside his bedroll. And for the first time in months, he smiled. 1 year later, Georgetown, Guyana. The auditorium at the National Arts Institute pulsed with quiet anticipation. Sunlight poured through wide colonial windows, illuminating wood-carved benches, student journals stacked in laps, notebooks filled with a wide-eyed hunger. At the front stood Kesi Daniels, her voice rich, low, precise. Dressed in a cream linen blouse, her curls pinned back with gold clips, she looked every inch the woman she had fought to become, unapologetically seen. Narratives, she said to the room, are power. They shape what we remember, what we erase, what we allow ourselves to love, or to fear. She paused, scanning the crowd. And sometimes, the hardest story to tell is the one that made you who you are. A hush. She reached for the next slide, but her hand froze. Because standing in the back row, quiet, still, watching like she was poetry itself, was Liam Ho. He looked different. Tanned, rougher around the edges, a simple button-down, no Rolex, no entourage. But the eyes hadn't changed, still storm-colored, still soft when they looked at her. Kesi's chest constricted. Her voice stuttered on the next sentence. She blinked, recovered, continued, but she felt him there with every breath, and he never looked away. She stepped outside into the golden dusk, heart thudding. The air smelled of heat and hibiscus. Her fingers gripped her notes as though they were armor. She didn't have to look back. She knew he'd follow. "You waited until the last slide," she said softly. "I didn't want to interrupt your story," Liam replied behind her. She turned. There he was, standing a few feet away, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be closer. Kesi folded her arms. "It's been a year." "I know. You disappeared." "I had to unlearn who I was, to become the man who could walk into your light without flinching." She swallowed hard. "And what are you now?" He stepped forward, broken, rebuilt, honest. "And what do you want?" He didn't hesitate. "To start again." "Why now?" Liam's eyes filled, not with tears, but with truth. "Because I built a kingdom," he said, voice raw. "It fell, and I lost everything, but I'd fall again for you." She exhaled sharply. "Do you even know what that means?" "Yes," he whispered. "It means I'll never ask you to be quiet again. It means I'll stand beside your voice, not over it. It means if all I ever do for the rest of my life is love you out loud, then I will have lived well." Silence stretched between them, full of history, gravity, flame. Then, Kesi stepped forward, one hand on his chest. His heart was racing. "I'm not the same girl you left. And I'm not the same man who couldn't fight for you." A pause. "Then let's meet each other for the first time," she said. "Kesi." "Don't say it," she whispered. "Just stay. This time, don't run." He didn't answer. He just pulled her in. And she didn't fall. She landed. That night, he walked her home. They didn't speak much, just hands brushing, glances lingering. He carried her canvas bag over one shoulder, like it was sacred. And when they reached her door, she looked at him. "You don't have to earn me, but you do have to walk with me." "Then lead," he said. "I'll walk wherever you go." She smiled softly, and for the first time in over a year, Kesi Daniels let herself believe. This time, the story would end differently. A dirt path snaked between sugarcane fields in Essequibo, Guyana, where dragonflies buzzed low over irrigation trenches and children played barefoot beside wildflowers. In a modest schoolhouse shaded by neem trees, Liam Ho stood before a small class of eager young adults. No screens, no suits, no marble floors, just a whiteboard, chalk, and a man once called Asia's youngest tycoon, now drawing diagrams about budgeting and social entrepreneurship. "You don't need $1 million to build something meaningful," Liam told the class, sleeves rolled, hands dusty. "You just need vision, discipline, and one person who believes in it with you." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Did you have someone like that?" Liam smiled, not the curated smile of the past. A real one. "Yeah," he said. "Once." That evening, Kesi waited under the mango tree beside the school, her sandals dusted from the walk. The sun hung low, gold melting into the sky. He stepped out, books in hand. When he saw her, his breath caught, like it still did, even now. "You came." "I promised," she replied. They walked slowly together. "You're different here," she said, lighter. "You're the first person who's ever said that like it's a good thing." She nudged him gently. "It is." They passed a field of cassava, and Liam paused to watch two students practicing a pitch by the fence. "They're incredible," he said quietly. "They've seen more struggle by 20 than I did in 30, and they still believe in the future. Maybe because someone like you finally told them they're allowed to." "Do you think she'd be proud?" he asked. Kesi looked at him. "Your mother?" He nodded. Kesi placed her hand over his. "I think she's been walking beside you this whole time." Back at her home, now surrounded by a garden of red hibiscus and school children's murals, Kesi lit a candle and pulled out a folded page from her journal. "I wrote something," she said. "It's not for the world this time." Liam leaned forward. "Then it's already my favorite." She smiled, voice steady but thick with emotion. "Not an empire of glass and steel, but of forgiveness. And you. Not skyscrapers, but the way your eyes soften when I speak truth. Not legacy, but the fact that you let go of your name, so I could keep mine. Not wealth, but the warmth of your hand in mine, even when the world has nothing left to give us. Not the power they once praised you for, but the courage I saw in you when you chose to become just a man who loved me." Liam's throat tightened. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he whispered, "I used to think you were the storm that ruined my life. Now I know you were the rain that washed it clean." She leaned in first. No tension, no war, no goodbye hovering between their mouths. Just this, just now. His hand cupped her cheek as their lips met. Soft, steady, sacred. A kiss that wasn't stolen or frantic, but promised. A kiss that said, "This is the version of us we never got to be." And as they pulled away, foreheads touching, she smiled. "I think I could love you like this." "Then let's stay like this," he said. "Not rich, not royal, just real." They sat together later that night, sketching out ideas in a notebook. Not business empires, community gardens, literacy programs, local mentorship incubators. No press releases, no logos. Just impact, just purpose. "You realize we're building something again?" she teased. "Yeah," Liam said, kissing her hand. "But this time, the foundation is you." The candle flickered. Outside, the world was quiet. But inside, two souls who had once stood on opposite sides of power were finally home. Kesi stands at the podium of the New Winds Initiative, in a sunlit room filled with Caribbean and Hong Kong students, seated beside their mentors, their artwork, their startup pitches, their poems. "This isn't a program," she tells the crowd. "It's a bridge, one that never existed before, but was always meant to." Beside her, Liam smiles. There's no suit, no empire behind him. Just a clean, simple linen shirt, and the pride of a man who's finally free. Kesi sat in the doorway of their modest hilltop home in Guyana, her notebook resting on her knees, surrounded by soft wind and the scent of cocoa trees. Her eyes scanned the horizon where the sea met sky. Liam emerged from the garden, dirt still on his hands. "You're hiding," he said gently. "I'm remembering." "What part?" She looked up at him, eyes glimmering. "The night I thought I lost you forever, and still hoped you'd find me." He knelt in front of her. "I did. I always would have." He reached into his back pocket and handed her something, a small folded piece of paper, faded, smudged. "I wrote this the night you left." She opened it carefully. "I never deserved your voice, but I carry it like scripture. And if this silence is the price of your peace, then I will go unheard forever." Tears filled her eyes. "Why didn't you give this to me?" "Because I didn't want to pull you back into pain. I wanted to become the kind of man worthy of your peace." "You are," she whispered. The wedding wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. A cleared patch of earth under a canopy of trees, strings of lanterns swaying in the wind, a scattering of friends from both Guyana and Hong Kong, students, artists, farmers, and children seated on low wooden benches. No gold rings, only braided cords of silk, one red, one indigo, one white, looped around their wrists as a local elder blessed their union. Kesi wore a dress stitched from recycled silk and cotton, each panel dyed in warm earth tones. Liam wore his mother's jade pin on his collar. There were no vows written, only what they knew by heart. "In a world that demanded we bow," Liam said, voice rough, "you stood, and because of that, I stand too." "You were never the prince I dreamed of," Kesi said, smiling through tears. "You were the man I didn't know I needed, the one who gave up an empire to build a life with me, an empire that was never mine." He kissed her hand. "It was always you." Later that evening, soft music played from a small speaker tucked into a bookshelf. Friends passed plates of coconut bread, callaloo, bao buns, and dumplings across tables layered with poetry chapbooks and secondhand novels. A young girl stood up and recited Kesi's favorite line. She wasn't born to be someone's silence. She was born to speak, and the world trembled when she did. Applause, laughter, someone cried. Kesi leaned her head against Liam's shoulder beneath the lantern light. "You think we'll last?" she whispered. He kissed her temple. "We already did." They said it wouldn't last. That power and love don't mix. That truth and legacy can't share the same breath. But they were wrong. We didn't just build a life. We built a world. Not of glass and steel, but of forgiveness. And you. This isn't the end. It's just the place where we stopped needing to fight and finally started to live. History is written by the victors, but love is written by the survivors. And we survived it all. The end.